Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello. And Tom Sokolowski joining me on a Thursday, September 4th, and he's very excited because he has new headphones.
Oh, it's just clear like I'm calling from NASA.
Well, we'll see how long.
Check in.
So Jess has just exited the studio, running down to Smithfield to
Crib notes.
see if she can get the stuff I left on my front seat, which was my fada.
Flotsam and Jetsam.
My fada for today.
As in hello mother, hello fada.
And and I said, Tom, I said to my beleaguered audience yesterday, after depressing the hell out of them for an hour, at least, I would not have stayed to listen to it. It was sort of like,
Schweigewaltig.
I said that, when you were here today, we were going to keep it light. I'm not sure I can. I don't know if I can.
Just think of champagne.
There's so little light these days.
Well, to lead into what you're going to tell them, the new police person, that's a positive thing. I mean,
that
it's heavy, but it's light heavy.
I think will be. And I did speak last night to the another former police chief of Madison, Wisconsin, David Cooper, who in fact had hired our police chief.
Elect.
And I said, man, I hope he's got a thick skin, because he's in for such culture shock. I came from Madison to Pittsburgh, and that's culture shock enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding. Their towns are...
But you think it would still be such culture shock today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because Madison is a very laid-back, progressive,
well, but
young city.
Yeah.
And this is, at least it was. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the reason
Scott
I say that
Walker's
is that's probably
you're
probably right. I've never been there. No, I've been to Mass. I shouldn't say that. But the other part is, though, but now with all the internet and that, you're not in quite such a cosseted,
right? So you can, do your homework.
Embargoed place,
right. But I just remember my initial reaction was that I had time traveled. I really did feel that way. I felt, and I would call people back in Madison and say, I feel like...
They don't have egg beaters here.
No, I feel like I've gone 30 years back,
really?
And it wasn't.
Wow.
It was.
Wow.
It was because of progressive things. It was.
Yeah.
It was because of the way women were treated here, and how I had left Madison as a woman, and I showed up here in Pittsburgh, and I was a girl.
Well, I remember it was so
interesting. It just seemed so weird.
When I was in, this was about the same time, because although I stayed,
I came in January of '81.
Oh, so even later. Yeah. When I went to college, which I stayed in Chicago, but I remember a number of my classmates were from
Mad City.
Well, no.
Oh.
From outside the Chicago area, outside the Midwest. So I think the biggest number were from the East Coast, I think. But anyway, and I remember, although they had chosen Chicago because
they were
it was
having
such a
culture
wonderful...
shock.
But they just sort of said, oh, Chicago, I live in New York, I live in Boston. And, they learned very quickly that the Midwest, not just Chicago, but the Midwest was very liberal. And I remember when I taught, this was 79, I think it was, 78, 79, that's right, at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, how incredibly progressive.
Oh, they were so progressive.
Was.
I mean,
and there was money for everything.
That upper
and the
Midwest,
arts.
Minnesota, Wisconsin, oh, God, it was wonderful. And then...
Even their cows spoke Latin.
Yes. And then this... damn thing, poison, happened to them too.
Oh, they're horrible. What wasn't one of those horrible people? Was Cantor from Wisconsin? No,
Ryan, the guy who ran
for
vice president. And then, Minnesota now gets people like Michelle Bachmann elected.
Yeah, exactly.
And now Wisconsin's governor is this god-awful Scott Walker. And the legislature is all Republican. I don't even know what the hell happened.
Sea change, I think is the word.
Wow. But Madison, reliably is a progressive city.
Well, university.
And
I don't
it just
think
doesn't
so much...
have a sense of a big city.
Yeah.
And
well, but I would say university. Think Austin, Texas, Ann Arbor, any big university city.
Thank you, dear.
Is always liberal. I suppose. Well, no, that has to be a bigger engine than state government.
You know what? I'm losing my mind.
Oh, no.
That's a Sondheim song.
I am is it?
I think I'm losing my mind.
Oh, thanks, Jess, but I'm losing my mind.
From Follies.
Because that's not it. And no, but that is the only thing I...
That's it,
no,
but
that's
it's not it.
But it's not it. So I left all my stuff at home.
Well, we shall persevere.
This is one of those days. Okay, screw it. Did you see the picture of all the secretaries of state all
with
in a
shovels.
row with shovels?
Yes, right.
And did you see Kissinger?
Yeah, oh my God, he looked... the first thing I thought of was, how they always say people shrink when they're older?
Oh my God! He has shrunk. He's also bent over. So, he has shrunk. He was shorter than Madeleine Albright, who was next to him, who's she's not a big woman.
Well, she's...
I'm talking
height.
attitudinally.
Well, because also Kissinger, he was never tall, but he always was so puffed up, like one of those turkey ads.
He's a powerful man.
Well, he was, but he also had that...
Yeah.
Ooh, I am Henry Kissinger, and that German accent.
Well, there he still is. And all those secretaries of state, my God, they're a bunch of long-lived guys. So there was... were.
Oh, there are only three that I saw in the photos.
They didn't show the whole picture. So there was James Baker from H.W. Bush.
Right.
There was Colin Powell. There was, and then Hillary and Kissinger.
Yeah, she looked perky next to the two.
Yeah, and then, what's her name? Madeleine. And then Kerry, who looked like he was 7 feet 5 inches tall with all those little people. But when you saw him next to Baker's also a tall man.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever. Anyway, it looks so...
Well, talking about that, now that's not his position, but what did you think of that speech? I can't remember where he made it.
Who?
The Vice President Biden about the second killing of an American
I didn't
journalist.
hear it.
Oh, it was sort of... And we'll find him. He'll go to hell. And hell. Oh, it was really fire and brimstone. Yeah, it was quite good. It wasn't just him being brassy, but it was very good. And I thought that's a little bit of zest that the president
a little bit
have.
of passion that we don't get from
Obama,
from Barack, who is just too cool for a lot of folks.
And increasingly so.
Yeah, he does seem to be
just
sort of.
It's like a soda pop that goes.
He does seem to be sort of disappearing. I agree. What is that? Are you sure it's not because the media is sort of presenting him that way and we're just sort of falling for that? I think it might be. And if we didn't have that, constant meme of, oh, he's so cool, oh, he's not this, that we ourselves would not
Well,
be
but the only thing is, I think...
He does seem disengaged.
Well, it does. Well, it's very interesting. There was something... What was the piece of legislation that we're talking about on NPR? And they made the point of saying, well, we think he might go this way rather than the other way because he's now in that point of... lame duck, or almost about to, and he's now interested in his legacy.
That's like that's inside the Beltway mumbo jumbo punditry, right? And now this and now that.
But the point is, if you do could be concerned, if you're a public official, how you could not be Obama notwithstanding. No, I know that, but the question is, when he's 99. What are his grandchildren or great-grandchildren going to read about him? First African-American president, and what are the next 3 sentences going to be? So I don't think that's necessarily untrue.
Well, I don't know. I'm sitting here making notes to myself about trying to remember things that I... All right, so the Wilson Center, I still hear little sputters and mutters of... people stepping forward and saying, hear this, hear that. Is any of that?
Well, the only comment I will make, for once I'm being parsimonious with my bile, is to say, I thought it was very interesting that Mark Belko of the Post-Gazette, who has been writing on this, he reported a story about this committee which has been meeting, soi-disant saviors of the self-appointed saviors of the Wilson Center. And the only person he quoted was Salahuddin, who I think is the chairman of that committee.
Right.
But, and then he mentions, what's her name? The woman who's gotten into trouble at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater. Yeah, anyway. But I thought it was very interesting he didn't mention who the committee was, because the committee was not 700 people. And I think the reason he didn't was the fact of any sentient being in Pittsburgh would say, oh, God, it's the same 10 old people
crowd
who fucked it up the first time, and now they're sort of rallying the troops who didn't rally the first time.
Yeah.
And then they did say, Sala didn't say this, it was the reporter, but he says, it could be, it may be, he says, if this proposal put forth by the foundations comes to pass, that the conservator, or whatever she's called, chooses it, that the cultural trust will be assigned the stewardship from the point of view, I guess, of programmatics and whatever. That's the first time I've seen that as a definite anywhere.
Well, stay tuned. Somehow I've lost interest. Isn't that weird?
You said it, oh Queen, not I.
Isn't it weird? Initially I felt, oh my God, you can't lose this great, oh my God. And now I think, I don't know.
It's like watching too many reruns of the Dukes of Hazzard.
Well, because it is true. It's the same old, same old. It's round up the usual
and
suspects.
At least that was funny.
At least, no.
To a certain degree.
Yes. In a wink and a nod kind of a way. So I had one of the guys in the foundation community here, the big guy, is Grant Oliphant. Grant Oliphant.
Newly of the Heinz Endowments.
Yes. His father is the ingenious political Pulitzer Prize-winning political cartoonist Pat Oliphant. And there was I happened upon this morning in the Atlantic Monthly. He was interviewed, and oh my God, I think he's right. This is so sad. But listen to what he said.
Which, Grant or
the father, the cartoonist? Mm-hmm. First of all, they seem like, I don't know Grant, but reading his father's interview, his father's a riot. His father's smart and funny and blah, 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 blah. Australian by birth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I get the impression Grant probably was born in Australia and came over here. But as a young kid, he's mostly American and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't know that. But here's what he says. And I thought, oh my God. The influence of cartoonists has diminished greatly, even in just the past 10 years. It's a noble and vital sort of art that took about 600 years to develop, going back to Leonardo and the grotesque figures of Goya. In part, it's been sabotaged by newspapers themselves. They're giving their content away on the internet and haven't figured out how to stay in business. Editors and publishers are a great disappointment. You've got editors who don't read now. I once did a cartoon of Reagan as Johnny Appleseed for a national magazine. Reagan was striding along, spreading his seeds, and waves
Pardon the pun.
Yes, and waves of pollution were growing up behind him. The editor didn't get it. He didn't know who Johnny Appleseed was. This would be the editor of an... You think he's making this up, Jess? Everybody used to freely use Shakespearean quotes, and apply them to a current problem, like, say, indecision. Alas, poor Yorick. And Oliphant says, you can't do that anymore. You'll get, hey, what's with this guy with the skull? So he's saying the audience, the the newspapers have dumbed down. The audience has dumbed down.
Well, what he's saying to me, which is the most heinous, is the fact that I can get that because I can imagine people on the internet don't know Shakespeare. But to me, the fact that a newspaper editor who was not a kid
would not know Johnny
Appleseed.
Well, he goes on. He says publishers of newspapers don't want to offend anybody. And the editors, their lackeys, are only too happy to play along. Controversy is not welcome in newspapers. Bill Malden, along with Herb Block and Paul Conrad, he was the pick of the bunch of American cartoonists when I was starting out, saw this coming about 10 or 15 years ago. And he said, Paul Conrad said, I don't want to do this anymore. And it turned out he was right.
Well, you know what's interesting?
Let me say, he said, and there's another important factor, education. He said the frames of reference have disappeared for a guy who's trying to do his living like this. You have to have a frame of reference to appreciate a cartoon, to know what is being caricatured. People don't do the reading of news anymore that would give them the background to know what the cartoon is about. You cannot refer to accepted wisdom or variations of accepted wisdom. We are in a forest fire of ignorance. And then the guy who's interviewing him says, you sometimes sound like you live somewhere between amused, frustrated, and angry. And Oliphant says, and appalled. Don't forget, appalled. I wish this guy was here, and we'll send his son wherever he is. I like Pat Oliphant. Grant seems, I've never met him.
Grant's fabulous.
Is he a nice guy?
I wouldn't say he's, he's not, he certainly has a sense of humor. I wouldn't say he's funny, but as a main thing. Well, and the only thing is, and this is fairly public, I feel comfortable saying it, he and his father are totally...
opposite.
Not opposite. What's the word when they... not disenfranchised.
They're estranged?
Estranged, yeah, for a long, long time. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Well, I don't know the reasons, but I think it was divorce with the mother and blah, 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 but... That's fairly well known. So, I mean, the only thing I was surprised when he started, not Grant, but the father, when he sort of says, "Oh, things are dying." Cartoonists. I would have thought, on the internet, there would be a perfect place to have these things appear because here we have to wait until the morning to see it.
Yeah. But nobody's getting paid on the internet.
Well,
I think that's
sure.
the thing.
Well, that's part of it.
And everybody's hooing and hollering about our new app. Oh, I used to listen this way. Now I can't do this. Right. And I finally said on Facebook last night, guys, we're just trying to make some. Do you know when iTunes had the people go to iTunes to get the show. Mm-hmm. iTunes was making money. Mm-hmm. We weren't making anything. We're not making money. And at some point, it's gotta.
Well,
someone's got to figure out how to. And the reason the change is. We want to control it so we get some money here.
Well, this is interesting because we had an incredible, I have to take credit for that, not that I designed it myself, but brought the people in who could and with the staff, incredible website. And so I was very interested to see if there was any way in which we could raise money using the web. Because we always did things really in advance,
right?
Avant-garde, as the French would say, of every other cultural institution around the country, really. So I brought in someone from one of the big ad agencies who had it's a national agency, who brought in someone from their Chicago office to work here, and that was his specialty. And we had this hour-long conversation. He said, "Oh, this is pro bono. We're doing this. But if you decide to bring us on, then the fees will be appropriately so." But it was interesting because he was saying at that point, which was now like 6 or 7 years ago, there still had been no way because, for example, I remember this one person on my board who was in advertising. She said, well, at least in a newspaper, if you put an ad in saying Friday and Saturday, ladies' bras on sale. You know what that ad costs, and then you could easily tabulate Monday morning how many bras were sold. So you could say the advertising cost $10,000. We sold $50,000 worth of bras. hey, it's a good idea.
Goodbye.
Whereas on the web, it's not so focused because it could be, in Poland, etc. And so no one yet, even some of the really big institutions, have not yet figured out. The only people making money, as you said, are like iTunes, because they're selling those demographics of, Lynn Cullen listened in, and she was interested in this, and she also buys bras, and she's a member of the ACLU, and so they could sell that information or use it themselves.
Right.
But
we're getting an audience, users of the internet who are used to getting everything for free, and there's going to have to be this wrenching moment when the free ride's got to stop at some point, because
they will.
Why would there be anything on there?
Yeah.
Why would anybody? I mean, I can maybe work for peanuts right now in my life, but I couldn't be doing this.
The one thing I would disagree with him, I mean, I wince when he says about Johnny Appleseed, but I guess you have to sort of look and say, it was very funny. I went to a play reading last night, which is on tonight and Friday.
Did you just interrupt yourself?
Yeah, I have to say this. I made a parenthesis. I went to this play reading last night, which is what I'm about to get to, but you can go tonight and Friday at Pittsburgh Filmmakers. It's a reading of this play, one-person play, about a director of Hamlet. And all he is giving the remarks. But anyway, what was funny in it, some of the remarks he'd make, and the audience is thought to be the cast. And he says, Lynn, when you're playing Ophelia, well, some of them were very classical references, and certain parts of the audience laughed. And others would be a reference to, it's just like that movie Kill Bill, and other parts of the audience would laugh.
Yeah.
But, so it was very cleverly written. But the point was, different parts of the audience laughed at different times.
Different things.
And, who are we to say that, Kill Bill, maybe it's not Shakespeare, but it may be Marlowe. I think we have to sort of see that. So if you don't know who Johnny Appleseed is, you may know who the Green Arrow is. Or, it's...
Exactly.
It's hard to sort of say people are stupid now because they don't recognize Johnny
heard
Appleseed.
Of some guy talking. I guess it was one of those TED Talks. And, God, he had such a radical idea. And I only came in at the end, but he was saying that the way we are educating children now is absolutely absurd. It is absurd. We live in a totally different world. The way learning used to happen was because books were rare, people had to, and information had to be put in your head because that's where you were going to access it. If you needed information, it had to be poured into the head and retained. You don't have to do that anymore. I hate to say the obvious, but all the information you ever want is right here. All the facts, all the stuff is right here. So, if information now is just readily available, then why are we still... Then education should be doing something else. Something else. And we're totally stupid about acknowledging and recognizing that we are using this old template of what is necessary for a child to know how to navigate the world. Right. Well, I got to tell you, no. And so what would it be?
Well, I don't know. That's something, for many listeners maybe to opine on. But I was thinking there were always libraries before. So if we, like somebody will say to Jess, look up what that word is, or where is the river that is, and she can do it really quickly. But that was always true. You go to the library, you could find that. But the difference would be if a librarian knew that a child was a good reader and that he liked... She would say, Johnny, do you know the books of Bill Pullman? Or do you know Mark Twain? So the librarian was sort of the weather vane. But again, she wouldn't do that unless the kid went up to her and said, lady, I want to read something and I like travel books or whatever.
We've got a caller. Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
So that phone you were holding in your hand is just that. It is just information.
Right.
And the point of education is using that information and turning it into knowledge. So
Well
that
put.
advances what you're doing. There's a huge difference between knowledge and information.
Well, of course. But this guy was suggesting that children left to their own
Devices,
literally, will educate themselves.
They will get information.
Well, but the only thing is, PJ, that it's not just information. There is a lot of opinion that's available on the.
And there's
And that's
context.
important. I mean, I think it's more about learning critical thought. That's at the point of education.
Oh yeah,
Teaching
sure.
you how to think.
Sure. Oh yeah.
But that's
Right.
not what we do. That's not what we do.
No, absolutely not. No, I'm not saying that
Right.
what we do is right. I'm just saying that phone is it's a dictionary.
It's
Or an
more than that.
encyclopedia.
It literally
fancy version of
holds
it.
all the knowledge, the facts, the
Right.
information that is known.
Well, and the dangerous part of it is from spying to just
Every book ever written.
Well, but spying, but also let's say what Lynn Cullen has bought books on Amazon is that it begins to sort of take your mind and say, oh, you bought this book, you'll like that book.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, part of what I always remember both as a kid, but also when doing scholarship in Italy when I was writing my dissertation, you'd go to find one thing, when did Augustus die?
And you go
and then
off
you get
somewhere
into
else,
something
right.
that tells you about the brothels
Right.
of Imperial Rome, and that could lead you into some interesting articles and scholarship. And this is so linear. As much as it's a matrix, the way most people use it is very linear.
But I think what this guy was pointing out, and it's so true in almost every realm of our lives, this stuff has changed everything. Technology has changed everything, how we access things, how we think about things, the speed with which we do it. And none of our institutions, including education, have caught up. They don't have a clue of now, well, okay, so what would our role be now? How, and you see nobody really talking about what we're doing is wrong.
Let me tell you an anecdote on that. One time, I may have said this before, but I think it's very telling. I was giving a tour at the Andy Warhol Museum when I was still there. And I had a group of kids from one of the Zapier prep schools, really smart kids. And I had taken them through once before because I always like to try and say, could an old goat energize teenagers? And they're there and trying to be cool and all that, but these were smart kids. So at one point I was standing in front of a Marilyn Monroe print and talking about what that all meant in Warhol's career and in life and who was Marilyn and is Maryland vital today to people who were interested in Lady Gaga and Lindsay Lohan and whatever. And there was this one kid who had always been in the past very talkative, and he was on this thing. And I said, Greg, normally you're reading. And I said, oh, is your girlfriend calling you? And we got a laugh.
No, he was looking up.
He said, oh, you told me that there are 10 other versions of the Marilyn. And I was looking at them. And I said, so that's a perfect way that you can access that kind of information. Because it would have been in the old days, I would have had to have someone run to the slide library, get me all the other slides, put them in the projector. So it can make some download. Now, again, it was information. It still needed me to give the sort of exegesis about Marilyn. But it's a quick way of getting things rather than struggle.
Hey, PJ, thank you.
Hey, can I say one more thing?
Oh, sure.
The other thing I wanted to say about that cartoonist was, because information is so disseminated, there's not one source, as we said, the books. So there's no kind of social contract anymore as to what, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, as to what is important information. So that it's exactly what Tom was saying about the difference between Johnny Appleseed.
Right.
And
There's
the
no
so
common.
I don't think it's a bad thing, but it is something we have to overcome because, well, it's like a common language. If you don't have a common language, it's hard to communicate.
Well, but that's true. And the thing is, I don't see how we're going to have a common language.
There'll be a chip in your head, and you'll just think.
Well, no, not but that. But I think this goes into the notion of there were always funny jokes in ancient Rome, so it wasn't just Caesar Augustus speaking. And just nowadays, there's this debate over, you probably read, and our listeners have read, about, the summer book list that kids have to read, and they'll be quizzed on to some degree or another. And this big argument of certain places, school districts, saying, we will not let so-and-so read Johnny Has Two Mommies. And then there were, let alone that, obviously about a lesbian relationship, but others that were just all liberal. Like I forget this one school district in Alabama, 8 of the 15 books they thought were horrible. And they were all things like Catcher in the Rye or what's the famous book by...
Tropic of Capricorn.
Well, you know what?
No, it wasn't that. Mark Twain. What was the guy?
Tom Sawyer.
Sawyer.
Thank you very much, because of the black-white relationship. So I think there's always going to be bellwethers, some nitwits and some smart people who are going to tell us this is parerga, as the Latins would have said, just like unessential side stuff, and this is the real information that you need to learn. Because, and also the other thing about education, I think, is you learn things, you accept things that others, your betters, those your sentinels, but then you're also taught, well, at some point, you may say, well, Shakespeare was wrong here. Einstein was wrong here. They're not always right, but it's up to you. But you can only critique them properly if you have, like Warhol always used to say, go to school, learn the rules, and then you can break
Then you
them.
rebel against
Yeah.
them.
Okay,
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye. Speaking of banned books, make a note on your calendar, the ACLU's Banned Books Night, where that's often a wonderful event, is happening on September 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Jewish Community Center in Squirrel Hill. And
Do they need readers?
No, they've already got everybody in line, and it seems to me they got some wonderful ones. And of course, I'm blanking on
Paul Pompiani, one of the newscasters.
No.
Yeah, I think I thought I read his name.
Well, his name is not Paul Pompiani.
Paul Steigerwald and Bob.
No. Oh, Bob Pompiani.
No, I don't think so.
I'm sure. All right. We'll see.
All right.
But that's the JCC, you said.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to say is I often wonder if parents, again, the job of a parent is to prepare a child for living in the world that they will live in.
Living in the parents' world or the children's world.
Well, that's the thing.
The rub.
But see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
How schools, in large part, are educating children to enter a world that won't exist. It absolutely is not.
Educating of the past.
Yeah, there's no interest. And I was thinking, and I have thought this with my kid too. I often thought that the parents who wouldn't let their kid play video games those parents were doing their children a disservice.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the world that those children will live in is going to be all digital. And when a child
Even if it was to be a third digital, they would be at a disservice.
And when children are young, the children of today, the video game players and all of this and the social media, their brains are being wired differently.
Yes, exactly.
Than yours was as a child and mine and all the children before us, because their world is not like the world that has ever been. And I think
let alone of the ancient Greeks and Romans.
Well, and I think when parents say no, no TV, no this, no that, you're thinking, hey, their entire life is going to be in front of a screen.
Well, because those parents are frightened. They don't know about the internet, but they didn't know about Greek and Latin either. So,
well, I really think that kind of protecting your child from this world is nuts. It's the world they will live in. Exactly. And they should know how to get around it.
Well, one of the things I've always been very opposed to anywhere in the world, but certainly in the United States, is this notion of homeschooling. Now, maybe,
Here and
if
there,
you have some... Now, and I'm not talking about children who have disabilities and their physical problems getting them to schools. And even there, kids can be on a computer watching as Miss Louise is teaching geometry. But largely, yes, all right, there's idea for parental values, etc. But part of the notion of schools, and I think we have to, in most instances, even in Alabama, give over to the fact that there is a sense of the common good, and that part of being in school is learning to get along with your peers.
I agree.
Because that's what
there's
a
that
citizen
social aspect.
does.
That's right.
And these kids who are I remember
cyber schooled and totally
and then they
away
come
from-
on and they're sort of nerd. There's this funny TV show coming up. I saw a commercial where there's this girl. She's this brilliant sort of nerdy person, but she doesn't know how to say thank you. Or when she meets you, she has this coach who says, and she says, good morning.
Well,
and you learn social skills. You learn how sometimes you're the out guy, sometimes you're the hero. But that's really, really important. Because
that's really why I
I
don't think you're doing your child a service to have them in a school in which everybody is pretty much the same. In other words, 99% are white, upper middle class, a suburban high school. That ain't the world. I got news for you. That ain't the world. And private schools, too. It's not the world. Or schools where it's only Catholic or it's only Jews or it's only... I think that's nuts. I think that kind of segregation is always doing a disservice.
Because there are presidents who... parents, thank you very much, who send their kids to Hebrew school on Saturdays, or Catholic, whatever day, or Catholic schools on Sunday after Mass, etc. There's time, and it's important to be part of your heritage.
It doesn't have to be all everything.
Geometry is geometry. You don't have to be wearing a yarmulke or a cross to teach.
I don't get it. I never have gotten
segregation.
It's
about the fact of everyone puts their spin on it, and we don't want that spin if it's not our spin.
It has to do with indoctrination.
Yeah,
Let's
indoctrination.
Be quite clear.
Yeah. Exactly.
It has to do with indoctrinating your child so they see themselves as part of this specific group. And I think that leads to trouble more than not.
Oh, yeah,
here's Roger. Regarding the August Wilson Center, I have a feeling that if it was the Terry Bradshaw Center or the Chuck Noll Center or the George Washington Center, that this institution would not be in its current financial situation. Maybe being thought of as a black institution doomed it in Pittsburgh.
I don't know who Chuck Noll is, so that goes into his second paragraph.
For God's
well, read the second paragraph. Well, I don't. I barely know who Terry Bradshaw is.
Football coach.
Well, I knew he was some sports thing.
He was the football coach for the iconic 70s.
Well, but the point is, he's not so like, he's not like not Guy Lombardi.
Jesus! Lombardi! Vince Lombardi! Guy Lombardo!
Well, they're close. No, but I'm saying that's the perfect, read his next paragraph, because it's perfectly what he's saying.
Okay, so regarding quotes and references that are not being understood by today's educated people. I can't tell you how many times I might quip about something that is frequently considered obscure. It happens to me. It happens to me all the time. I know I'm getting older. I'm 52, but I also can't believe what people don't know. I'm far from being a genius and don't even have a college education. Am I turning into the Dennis Miller of conversationalists because of my age and that I am curious?
Very good point. He's curious. That's what intelligence and brain work is all about.
And I have a feeling that a good education is about helping children know
what they don't know.
Exactly, and the curiosity is such is one of the most precious things you can have, and getting to the point where you think I now know everything I need to know, that's death.
The voila moment. I remember my colleague, much well known, it was a marvelous part of our cultural scene here, Richard Armstrong, who ran the Carnegie Museum of Art, always used to say about Pittsburgh, and he was fond of Pittsburgh, he'd say, it is a very uninquisitive population here. They like what they like, they know what they know.
And they're not growing as much
And they're not interested. Not that they're necessarily fearful. They're cautious, but not fearful, but it's not like, woo, woo, if we have, the aliens descend tomorrow. Wouldn't that be neat? Yeah, they might kill us, but it would still be neat, No, we like what we like. And I mean, that's a general
Obviously, it's a
certain level.
Pittsburgh, for those coming from outside, it does strike you as, yes.
It's not Silicon Valley.
It's more stolid, and I love it too. But I mean, it is true. I think.
But you're one of the least stolid dykes in Pittsburgh.
Well, here's the thing. Do you call me a dyke?
No, stolidites.
Oh, I thought you said solid dykes.
I know a few of those too. But that's not you. No, I made a word up, stolidites. If that's the word. Stolidini.
Sounds like
as the Italians would say.
A
solid dyke. Now, lady lesbians do not call in.
So, but I think one thing that's interesting about Pittsburgh and me is here I am. I come to Pittsburgh. I talk funny. I'm loud in a city that's not progressive and feminine.
Prim is not a word we'd call Lynn Cullen.
No, I'm totally going up against everything that's sort of this traditional, very traditional, and girls in their place kind of a city. And the amazing thing is I was warmly welcomed here. So,
but don't you think people sort of thought, oh, we'll chip some of those edges off of her?
No, I think I felt very loved and accepted.
Okay.
And I think Pittsburgh, even though, I mean, they wouldn't, I don't know. I think Pittsburgh does appreciate characters. Let's
move on.
All right. Well, I don't have a clue what to move on to. So here, let's hey Jess.
Yep.
Take a quick break.
Will do.
And let me get my act together. Thank you.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Download the CP Haps app to find out what's happening in Pittsburgh. It's the fun and free app that puts the most popular events at your fingertips. Text events to 77948 to download now. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Brought to you by Pittsburgh City Paper.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
All right, I did note in the paper today that the founder and the power that is behind the Toonziem.
Oh, yes, Joe Woos.
Joe Woos.
Or Woos? I'm
Was?
not sure.
It's W-O-S. So
yeah,
how do you...
It must be Was then.
I think
yeah.
it's Was.
Yeah.
Is stepping down. And that thing, that place there, sort of across from the August Wilson Center, this little venue.
Maybe that's the miasma of Pittsburgh.
No, I just think that
he's done a very, very fine job, yes.
He had a vision, and he just by doggedness and hard work pulled it off so that place is acknowledged as a
Oh, yeah.
real,
I have
real
some
asset.
personal connection with that through our mutual friend Rob Rogers,
who's
and
on the board.
Twice,
Yeah.
yes, I think he's chairman.
He's the
of the
president
board,
of the board
or
right
president.
now, right?
But twice, and one time, about 10, 12 years ago, and then the second time during the Gen 8. No, what was it? Gen 20?
No, the 20, the G20.
G20, not Gen 20. We did exhibitions. One, the first time when there was going to be a conference of these political cartoonists, and we did an exhibition that Rob curated.
Mm-hmm.
No, we 3 times. Then we did one that it was just a variation on Rob's cartooning because he's so good. And then the third time was he said, well, what time wouldn't it be great to get from our international membership cartoons that from all around the world that are about pertinent issues that potentially could rub against one another when those leaders met. So we had a cartoon by each one of a major cartoonist from
every country that was represented.
And they were interesting. Some of them were quite pungent. I remember one from a Muslim country, I can't remember which one, taking on Israel. I mean, not in a horrible, but it was, there was a pinch to it. And it was very interesting. I remember the White House being, we can't have them see that. And I said, what do you mean can't have them see that? I mean, there's a range. Oh, well, really, those people. But, and Joe Walsh worked with us on a couple of those and those projects. And
but they said the article says that he sunk his own money into it. That he has not been really making any money. He has young children.
Yeah,
how could he? I mean, how would he? It's amazing.
Well, people have a passion.
Do.
I think they probably made because they don't charge anything, and they make whatever money they make. There's a little bookshop which sells both comic books and
whatever,
they
have.
But they also then sell original cartoons, and a lot of it is more like Al Cap than Rob Rogers. And if someone bums in there and buys a $20,000, I think that's not often, but it's a nice shop and its holdings are really, really. I haven't been there in a little while, but I was surprised at some of the things.
No, it's really impressive, and because it's right over here, it's just
Liberty
a block
Avenue.
away.
Mm-hmm.
I often see Joe walking around here. I don't think it was clear if they said what he's going to do.
Well, he's going to do one of, I guess, a popular book where he'll make some money.
Oh, he
called
is
The
making...
Three Pigs of Pittsburgh.
The Pigsburgers.
That's
the
right,
three
the
little
Pigsburgers.
Pigsburgers. And it's a children's book where the pigs are
right.
Pittsburghers.
But then I think he
pigs.
has a couple of more serious books on
But you don't make a living doing books anymore.
No, that's true.
I'm worrying about how he's maybe he's married to somebody who's got
Although,
some
to make a point, though,
somewhere.
again, Rob, a friend of both of ours, I think he's done pretty well with his couple of books.
Oh.
I mean, he's not like Dorothy Sayers, mind you, but if anyone knows who she is, going back to the previous person who had written an email.
Yes.
But no, he's done pretty well.
Oh, damn it.
What?
Because I had something I wanted to talk about, and now it's gone. And
just pull down from the cloud. There was something on the news that 3 people said, I don't understand what that damn cloud is. What is that cloud?
Well, it's not. It's just something they call.
No, I know.
It's apparently some little building in North Carolina or something. Oh, I know. Speaking of North Carolina, those 2 guys, those 2 brothers.
Oh, the ones who
are let off. One on death row, one serving a life sentence.
17 years, was it? Something like that?
31
was it really that much?
years.
Wow. Oh, that's right.
Most of their lives. They were teenagers. They were teenagers when they were wrongly accused, wrongly convicted of a brutal rape and murder of an 11-year-old girl.
And the newspaper acknowledged that they were of subnormal intelligence, and they were forced into a confession.
Forced into confessions. There are so many red flags here.
Yeah.
But you see, and they confessed. The confessions were written by the cops, and then signed. There was nothing. Can you imagine So I was reading this article about these two guys, brothers, coming out after having probably the lion's share of their lives stolen from them. And do you know there is nothing in the law that offers them any help?
I think they would have to sue for wrongful whatever. But no, there's no money.
No, I don't even think you can do that. They
it.
have to appeal to the governor, and the governor has to then give them a pardon of innocence or something like that.
No, but I think you can if for some reason that they found either if they could prove that their defense counsel was a jerk. Because often those free, whatever they're called,
the guy who prosecuted them.
But if they can find some sort of illegality, I think you're wrong there.
It is amazing that the state can get away with taking someone's life like that. And not offering. They were pointing out that when they went in, they don't even know they don't know what the internet is.
Yeah, sure.
They don't know how anything works anymore.
Well, they're being 17 and now they're 47?
17 and 15. Yeah. And can you imagine? And somebody, I don't know where I read it, but the case they were convicted in, this murder, was so horrific a murder that it was talked about a lot. It was known about. And when one of the justices, and I'm blanking on who it is, of the Supreme Court, said that he was against capital punishment, he changed his mind. This is not the current court. He had changed his mind and was against capital punishment because you could end up killing an innocent man, and it was not blah, blah, blah. And Scalia, who was on the court at that time, begged to differ and said something about, it's cases like, and he specifically referred to the case of this murdered child. He says it's cases like that make capital punishment necessary.
Well, I hope he's spitting off feathers today.
So Scalia was more than willing to have
burn some guy,
killed this guy who just got out yesterday, to have executed him. I wonder what Scalia's thinking today.
Probably not.
He's not thinking anything?
Well, who knows? But the other part of it is, too, that's tragic. I mean, what you just said, it's tragic. But also, I can't believe that these guys, just like any prisoners who've been in that system for, even 2 years, but 30-some years, you learn to survive because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Even, and everyone is in Birdman of Alcatraz. And then how often when something like this happens, they fall afoul of the law, often very quickly. Not because they're evil people, but that's, they've been
destroyed in jail. Okay.
And then the same thing happens again. And then you say, oh, how sad and how tragic.
Roger writes...
That's a tragedy. To go back to last week.
Oh, do not start that fucking thing up again. What do you think this is, NPR?
Well, it's decidedly not NPR.
Let's be intellectual. Here, let's get back to the real world. Roger writes, I have a couple of questions for Tom.
Okay.
Who's Andy Warhol? And the reason he asks that is because he then goes on to say, how the hell do you live in Pittsburgh and not know who Chuck Noll is? He said, I knew who Chuck Noll was long before I moved to Pittsburgh.
Well, the point I'm making is I'm not saying that Andy Warhol, in the grand scope of things, is tantamountly greater than Chuck Noll. What I'm saying is different people live in different worlds and have different sets of information.
Yeah, but
wait a minute. And I've heard of Terry Bradshaw, but I have not heard of Chuck Noll.
Jesus.
Well, Jesus.
Christ.
Why?
That's odd because
it's not odd.
So you don't,
I must say I never heard the name in my head, but it's not like, oh, Chuck Noll. I've heard of the Immaculate Reception. Is that good enough? Thank you very much.
I don't know.
But, I think it's much more important to know who Sophie Maslow was than Chuck Noll.
Maslow.
That's what I said.
You said Maslow.
No, I didn't. You're
Check
listening.
the tape.
But anyway, but to know who she is, she was mayor. Just because a guy coached people who threw footballs.
All right. Just
No.
Here.
But that's as bad as someone privileging Jane Austen as opposed to To Kill a Mockingbird on the list. Sports should be up there and not arts. I'm not saying we just come from different areas of interest and expertise and different parts on the world trajectory.
Aaron writes, I'm glad Tom is there to represent those of us that, how do I put this politely, don't hold those sports-related heroes in much, if any, regard. I think it is fine, of course, for people to play games. And for you guys sound very snooty. Let me finish this.
Isn't it called a football game?
And for people to watch games. But I think that industry is repellent. I'm sure there are a few extraordinary people that play football or soccer or whatever, and a legitimate hero or two among them. But that would be just that, extraordinary. In my opinion, these people are mostly less than role. I'm not saying they're role models. I'm not going to get in an argument where words are being put in my mouth. Anyway, it's nice that you're someone who doesn't bow and scrape at the feet of the NFL. And then Aaron was ahead of me here. He says, sorry if that sounded too bitchy. I'm actually in a good mood. Sounded a little bitchy.
No, it didn't. It's because you're coming from this position that sports are higher than high. And I've never said...
Don't tell me that's where I'm coming from.
Yes, you are, because every time this comes up, you burst out like I'm putting Hitler above Spinoza.
Sports are fun.
Oh, sports are fun. The Sistine ceiling is brilliant. So they're two different things, but I don't say, you don't know who Michelangelo is?
Well, how come I know? I can know who fucking Michelangelo is and Chuck Noll.
But you are a rarity.
Oh, that's not a
yes,
rare
it is true.
thing. I'm of this world.
Honey, I could go out onto Smithfield Street here and sort of ask a whole bunch of people, and we'd see what the responses are.
Well, I used to do that in television. I used to take pictures.
Oh, right. Who is this?
Of, people you should know.
Yeah.
And I would go down and say, who's that? They never knew. Nobody ever
shocking,
knew anybody.
Really,
It was really astonishing. And I stopped doing it because I felt bad because I was making fools out of people. And it just didn't seem like a nice thing to do. But it was mind-blowing.
Well, I mean,
and the only thing they did know were...
sports or maybe some movie stars. But I mean, no, it's right. All right, I don't think it's the worst thing in the entire world to know who your state representative is, although you should. But when some people didn't know who the vice president was,
they don't even know who the president is.
I mean, that is shocking. I don't care.
They don't know. They couldn't
Those
name
people are on the front pages of
one Supreme Court justice to save their soul, but they knew Judge Judy. Like that, right?
TV,
yes.
TV.
No, I know. But there's something, there's a real negative that comes with that kind of ignorance because the job of a citizen
that's it.
is to be informed.
That's well put.
And that doesn't mean, knowing what, what's her name, Boo Boo did last night. It's informed means keeping an eye on the more serious stuff
for
that's
your own
going
good
on.
And for the good of the constituency. And the country, yes, exactly. But that's, I think, crucially important.
And I'm here to tell you you can do all of it.
No, I completely agree with that. But no, I think what you just said is very important because more and more, partly because of the internet, what have you, and these headphones, etc., we are only interested not even in our homes with a nuclear family, whatever that family may be or how it's constituted, but people just don't give a shit not only who's in the next bedroom, but who's in the next apartment, who's on the street.
Right.
And if you don't, then how can so no wonder you don't trust the police or the fire department to stop your house from burning down or doctors having penicillin when you need it. Because no man is an island.
John Donne.
Well, very good. Because he said something that is very potent, even today. And it's what...
Never
500
send,
years ago.
Never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. That's the last line.
I know.
I always had the hots for John Donne.
I somehow could not think of any more weird pairing.
Why?
Ida Cullen.
He wrote the most amazing love sonnets that you could. Oh my God! He wrote this one. I'm sure I've talked about it. This one. I think it's titled "To His Mistress, Going to Bed."
Yes, right.
Right. And in it, so he would have been writing in 15 something or other.
Yeah.
And he talks about, what he wants to do with her body. And this is in 1560, and he's a churchman. He's of the church. And the line that blew me away was, "Oh, my America." That is in there. "Oh, my America, my newfound land." He's talking about his mistress's body. And the metaphor is my America. So to him, America was this strange, there was nothing
untouched,
there.
Untouched,
pure.
Unknown,
pure. So, and I thought, oh my God, so in 15 so-and-so, America was like a virgin's body to this man. "Oh, my America, my newfound land, license my roving hands, and let them go above, beyond, beneath, below." I might have it inside out and upside down.
Yeah, right.
But I got to tell, I felt
it's sexy stuff.
Absolutely in love with him when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Because you read
now,
that.
Did you get that reading yourself, or was that through a teacher?
No, I think it was myself.
Oh, okay, great. No, but I mean, even if it was through a teacher, because sometimes the language can sound
I don't think,
because
in high school, there's no way a teacher would have used "to his mistress going to bed."
That's true.
They would not have done it. So I found that one out on my phone.
Good for you to be able to read all that. It's right there. I mean, that's the thing.
Oh,
but I think in education, it's that point of, in that sort of rather arch
it's
language.
Time. It's time to go.
Often people will be turned off.
I gotta go. I have a doctor's
appointment. All right, goodbye. Be healthy.
I gotta go. Bye. I gotta go. Thank you very much, Tom. And
thank you.
Potter tomorrow. The rat.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.